All right, we're going to go ahead and get started on the webinar. Again, thank you everyone for joining. And today we're going to cover the 5 ways to automate routine tasks and focus on higher value work. This is the third in our webinar series. And today we're really going to focus on some of the day-to-day tasks that administrators and IT personnel do and ways that we can automate them. So, again, with the Cloud IT webinar series, some of the things to expect is we're really doing this to cover best practices, industry research, and common challenges and solutions. We do these every month, and we have people from within Better Cloud present. We also have some outside people present, and it's really meant to be a general Cloud IT webinar series. Our next upcoming webinar is 10 critical numbers for every Google Apps admin to know. And it should be a great webinar, particularly for organizations that are fully leveraging Google Apps and trying to get the most out of their Google Apps investment. And again, that's scheduled on September 23rd, and it's at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. So please register at bettercloud.com/numbers, and we look forward to the next in the Cloud IT webinar series. We're going to start off today with a poll question to kind of get you guys to answer kind of what we're looking for on this. And basically the question is, in which of the following areas are you looking to increase efficiency? So if you could go ahead and answer the poll question now. This will just help us guide the presentation. Again, these polls are incredibly helpful to provide us feedback. And also just to really figure out what people are really looking to enhance in their Google Apps or their cloud environment. So feel free to select multiple answers. For some of you, you may be looking to increase efficiency in all of the areas. Thank you guys for taking the time to fill that out. Not unsurprising, we had 68% are looking to increase efficiency on user and directory management. That's always one of the core tasks at IT that people are always looking to make more efficient. We also had a high percentage on account onboarding and offboarding, and then email management and passwords. So great answers. Again, I think there were multiple people that selected all of them. We actually, the lowest ranked one got a 41%. So it looks like all of those areas are areas that people are looking to increase efficiency. So hopefully today's webinar will offer some insights and some possible solutions around how we can increase efficiency in those areas. Again, a lot of the focus on this webinar series is around the cloud office and the changing role of IT. Here at Better Cloud, and I think really across the whole industry, the shift that's going on is a pretty fundamental change into the way IT operates. The shift of organizations moving from a on-premise infrastructure over to a cloud-based infrastructure is pretty dramatic in the way that it affects the role of IT within an organization. IT used to end up doing a lot of type of maintenance activities, a lot of backing up, a lot of updates, that type of stuff. They became a very reactive organization in a really reactive portion of the organization in a lot of companies. With the cloud office and the move to the cloud, we've really seen a shift that those same IT personnel are getting out a lot of that day-to-day kind of mundane routine tasks, and they're allowed to be a lot more proactive rather than reactive. And this big shift in having additional bandwidth time allows them to really focus on driving organizational change. It used to be that IT was an area where it was an expensive area for a company, and it ended up being reactive. Now it can actually be a cost-saving area, and it can be proactive. And that's really a lot of what we're pushing here with this webinar series and the different talks that we're having. We actually did a survey. Better Cloud surveyed over 1,500 IT professionals in 53 countries. And one of the big questions was asking what they're doing less of. You know, with this big generational type shift in IT, what are the areas where you're spending less time doing? What tasks are you spending less time doing? You can see a lot of the things are scheduled and unscheduled maintenance tasks. Again, as you move to a cloud-based infrastructure, as you move your email up to Google and your other items up to cloud-based infrastructure, a lot of those routine maintenance tasks, a lot of the server upgrades, those type of things are no longer necessary. You know, Google is handling all the server upgrades, all of the new patches or fixes or enhancements that are being pushed out are all handled by Google. You no longer have to pull backup tapes. All of those type of things that the IT organization was responsible for are now handled by the cloud provider. You can also see that people are spending a lot less time on storage and quota management. I know that in the past, in my previous companies, when I was on an on-premise email infrastructure, it was always a big deal of trying to keep your mailbox under a certain size. And you'd have to go through every, you know, depending on how much email you got, maybe it was every month, maybe it was once a quarter, you'd have to go through and pick and choose what items you wanted to delete. And you'd always do some sorting by figuring out which ones you had the same presentation attached to a bunch of different emails, those type of tasks to really manage against a fairly small quota of email. Well, nowadays a lot of that has gone away. You know, with Google Apps Unlimited, a lot of organizations don't have any mail quotas at all. So you can keep all of your email messages that you want, all of your email messages that are aligned with your retention policy and your archiving policy. You don't have to make that choice of which of these two emails is more important or less important. And then also from a IT management standpoint, they don't have to make that decision of, do we need to buy additional hard drives? Do we need to buy additional servers? Again, all of that is offloaded onto the cloud provider. The other items, you know, again, upgrades, but also data recovery. That used to be a fairly time-consuming task. I know that in previous organizations, if someone needed to recover someone's mail file, they would have to do the arduous task of going back through and looking at tapes and pulling different tapes, and you had a whole tape schedule. Well, a lot of that's been eliminated. With products like Vault and other archiving products, it's just a matter of going into the Vault. You can search it just like you're searching Google. You can pull specific information. You can go back to specific dates. It makes it very easy to recover that data and return that data to the user or to HR or to whoever the appropriate personnel are. The nice part about this is that with the tools out there, it's become such a simple process that a lot of organizations are also offloading this. Again, if the legal department is searching for specific emails for a potential legal case, you can offload that with some very short training and show them how to do it. They're able to do that recovery. They're able to search through the Vault or other e-discovery type of tools and do that recovery on their own. Again, taking those routine tasks that IT has done, you know, ever since we had email, and offloading them onto the legal department, which are really the ones that know exactly what they're searching for and know exactly what they are hoping to find. Some of the things that IT is actually doing more of, where this extra time that they have, the extra availability that they have, they're able to focus on more proactive type things. And some of these things are end user training and improving collaboration. IT has always been about getting people to work together, whether it was the invention of networking so two people can work on the same network together, on into email, on into the collaboration tools that we have available today. And IT is really now able to drive that further out into their organization because, again, they're not doing the routine, you know, backup and upgrade type tasks. They're able to actually push some of the features and encourage through training and collaboration users to fully leverage the tools that are out there. They're also looking at infrastructure and security enhancements. Again, security used to be a very reactive thing that you would react when there was an issue. Now that IT has removed some of those repetitive tasks, they're able to actually be proactive and go out searching for additional security tools to go out and perhaps prevent security risks in advance rather than just be reactive when an incident happens. They're also more focused on strategic planning. And this becomes a big thing as more and more items move to the cloud and more processes and infrastructure moves to the cloud. Strategic planning becomes a very big item. It also becomes an item that's much easier to react to and adjust to changes because you are dealing with the cloud platform. It used to be that your infrastructure was built out in the server room, so even a minor change, even switching from one email platform to another, became a very large issue because you had to scope out servers, you potentially had to add additional servers, there were hardware costs that you had to buy in advance, that type of stuff. Now with the cloud infrastructure, a lot of the changes can be made very quickly. You can also do full research. You can do the investigation in advance because you can log in, see the whole system in use, and work through it and fully test it without having to build out, additional servers, additional server room space, that type of stuff. And then the biggest, I think, growth thing for IT personnel is the availability of professional development. It used to be when you were doing maintenance and all these routine tasks, the minute you took 2 or 3 days off to go to a continuing education thing or to take a class on a new technology was the day that everything would break. Suddenly email would stop delivering, suddenly you run out of disk space. All of those type of things would happen. Now with all of that offloaded, it has allowed IT personnel more freedom to go and advance their professional development and learn new techniques and learn new tasks and that type of stuff to improve the overall IT efficiency. Again, I recommend that you guys take the time to go out and look. Again, we surveyed over 1,500 IT personnel and in 53 countries, and you can go to bettercloud.com/trends, and you can actually look through the results of the survey. I believe also yesterday our survey was written up in CIO magazine. So it's been written up on multiple publications, and I definitely recommend taking the time to look at the results. It's kind of fascinating to see where the trends are going and where IT in general is going. So now we want to make sure that we focus on the time-saving automations that can provide IT with additional time. Again, the key here is to offload some of the repetitive tasks or offload the tasks into departments that make more sense for those particular tasks, and to really make your system run more smoothly overall. Again, this frees up time for IT personnel to be more proactive. It frees up time for them to start taking on some of these projects that may have been sitting on a shelf, so to speak, for years and years because there just wasn't time for any personnel to focus on it. So with that, we're going to present what we think are 5 of the top time-saving automations within a cloud infrastructure. So a lot of these will focus on Google Apps, but they really apply across all cloud infrastructures. They're items that you can take to just about any cloud platform, and if applied correctly, they can really save you time and really reduce the amount of repetitive type tasks that your personnel is doing throughout the weeks and months. So the first one sounds fairly straightforward at the beginning when you say leverage org units. Almost all organizations, particularly large organizations, leverage org units in some way or another, whether it be through your Active Directory system or your LDAP system, grouping people in org units. Maybe you pass those org units on to your Google Apps system or to your other cloud platforms. But what we're saying is take the time and take the investment to make sure that those org units are meaningful and make sure that they're correctly applied to every cloud-based system. So within most cloud-based systems, and I'm going to use Google Apps as the example, org units allow you to have a lot of different functionality. They also allow you to apply security, to share out access to different parts or different functionality within the tools, and grant permissions by OU. A lot of time organizations get scared of putting in the effort and putting in the upfront work that it takes to make sure that those org units are directly mapped to what the functionality of the system is. I know that in the past when I've worked with migrating companies over to Google Apps, large organizations would say, oh, well, we've got some type of org unit set up within our LDAP, we'll just transfer that up to Google Apps. Well, that may not necessarily apply to the functionality that you want to use in Google Apps, and it often makes you make decisions on Google Apps that are not necessarily the direction you want to go as an organization. What we recommend is that you organize your org units for each specific cloud app. For example, with Google Apps, you may want to organize by department or job function. Maybe location makes more sense to your organization, or maybe you just want to set it up as a Google Apps access level. All of those things you can do, and all of those things you can automate directly, whether you're provisioning users one at a time or with the bulk provisioning tool, or whether you're using GADS or an LDAP sync. You don't need to map your org units directly from an LDAP source. You can actually, in a fairly brief amount of time, once you've architected what you want it to look like in Google Apps, you can put in formulas that allow your LDAP source to sync up and provision people in the correct org unit within Google Apps. And what this really allows you to do is then to fully leverage the security and the permission features within Google Apps to really have granular control over your environment and also provide granular control of that environment out to various other departments or various other areas of IT. Again, the initial setup, if you're changing the way, if you're not directly matching what's in LDAP, there is some setup time, but the rewards down the road of having it mapped correctly and having your org units configured correctly for the specific service will more than pay off for the amount of time that you have to spend on initial configuration. So again, a lot of organizations leverage org units. We just recommend that you leverage them for the specific system that you're talking about, and that maybe your Google Apps org units may not match directly with your LDAP org units, or perhaps in your Salesforce or some other platform. Org units may map a little bit differently based on the needs of the organization, but taking that time to configure them correctly really pays off in the long run. The next thing, and it was what a large number of our initial polls said they'd like to make more efficient because they spend a lot of time doing it, and that's the onboarding and offboarding. Again, an interesting thing that I've learned throughout the years in IT is that there seems to be two systems within any organization that are by far the most accurate in terms of users and their information. And the first one is always payroll. If people are not getting paid, they very quickly raise their hand and speak up and say something. And the other one seems to be email. And if someone's, as much as we'd like to not get email some days, as soon as someone is not able to log in or not receiving any email, that's another area that they raise their hand very quickly, they log tickets very quickly, they're very proactive in getting it fixed. There's perhaps hundreds, maybe even thousands of other systems across an organization that, depending on what the user's job profile is, they may be set up completely wrong in it, but they may not notice for a month, 2 months, 6 months, that type of stuff. And that's where the challenging of onboarding and offboarding comes in, is that you need some way to streamline what is a multi-step and an error-prone process. When a user leaves an organization or a user is hired on in an organization, you want to make sure that you're not only removing their access as they leave or providing them access as they come on board, but you're also providing or removing the correct access without deleting data or losing data in the process. What we found is most efficient is if you can delegate this process off to HR. And on the IT side, particularly with on-premise systems, there was way too much involved, way too much on a deep technical level that didn't allow you to offload any of this to HR. You often set up a process by which HR would send you an email or they'd log a trouble ticket, and then IT would go in and go through the process of provisioning and setting up users within systems. What we've discovered with the tools and the items that are available and the ease of configuration in most cloud-based systems is that a lot of this can be offloaded to HR. The more you can streamline and automate it, the more you can offload to HR. And again, this just takes one task that you spend an inordinate amount of time on and delegates it to a different department. Again, taking some of that load off of IT. There's multiple steps, particularly, and again, I'll use Google Apps as the example, but there's multiple steps in any onboarding or offboarding process. There's number one, setting up their email and their access to the other Google services, but there's also the sharing of groups, making sure they're in the right groups, perhaps sharing out documents or sites, those type of things, so that if a user is coming on board, they have access to the right items and the right materials to do their job, but then also as they're offboarded to make sure that their information is not lost, but the user is removed from the system and no longer able to access items that may be confidential or proprietary to an organization. Again, talking about some of the tools out there, Better Cloud has a deprovisioning workflow that takes what is, again, an arduous and an error-prone task and turns it down to literally walking through a workflow and clicking a few buttons based on the user. It makes it very easy. Again, with Better Cloud, you can automate this so that access is given to the HR, and the only access they have to Better Cloud and to the back-end systems is through this deprovisioning workflow. And then it's just a matter of them walking through the various steps and the various checklists to make sure they're doing each process correctly. It's also something that when offloaded to HR, that everything is captured in the audit log so that if IT needs to come back at a later date and determine what was done correctly or incorrectly, or if they want to review it on a regular basis, they can do that. And again, Better Cloud is a tool that's out there. There are multiple other tools, depending on your system and your platform, that make this deprovisioning or provisioning process very streamlined and very straightforward to where it's no longer a large technical task. It becomes more of a point-and-click type of task, making it very easy to offload to HR or other departments. Again, like I said, one of the keys to offloading or delegating these type of processes to other departments within an organization is making sure that you have access control configured correctly. Obviously, you probably don't want to set up your entire HR team with super admin access to your Google Apps control panel. Then they have free reign to do whatever they want, particularly in a lot of areas that they don't necessarily understand, such as email routing or archiving policies or any of those type of things. So with tools like Better Cloud and other tools, you can very quickly in the access control section set it up so that they have very limited access and they're only able to do the tasks that apply to them. They're also only able to see information around the tasks that apply to them. So again, having a great access control set up on your tools allows them to not only do the tasks, but to have the right type of access to do those tasks without overexposing your admin or control areas within these applications. Our next poll question is, how much time on average do you spend offboarding users per month? I know that from my personal experience in dealing with some large, particularly in retail and some of those type of areas, this ends up being a huge amount of their monthly time because they do have so much turnover. There's one organization that has, it's a large retail organization, and they have multiple hundreds of people come and leave their organization on a monthly basis. So again, looking at the amount of time that takes for the IT personnel to go through and try to manage that, it's a fairly large amount of time. And if you think about it, the IT personnel is doing it, but the HR personnel is also doing it for HR systems and payroll systems and that type of stuff. So the more you can streamline it and make it so that one organization or one department within your organization is handling it, and they're also making sure that all steps and bases are covered, can really streamline and save some time. So, all right. Thank you guys for completing that. I'll go ahead and close the poll. And so looking at the results right now, we've got 48% say 1 to 5 hours a month they spend. There's 6% that spend 10 hours plus. So 6% is a small number of users, but if you think about the number of hours that they're spending, it's a fairly large number. Even at the bulk of them, which is 48% at 1 to 5 hours, if you say you're spending 5 hours a month on deprovisioning users and you extrapolate that over a year, it ends up being a fairly large amount of time that you're focusing just on deprovisioning users. And again, like I said, you've also got to consider that your HR staff is probably spending a decent amount of time doing the same type of steps and the same type of process in other systems. And the more you can streamline and combine that into one system and one process by which people are provisioned or deprovisioned in the systems, the more time that IT will have back to be proactive and focus on other initiatives within the IT sector. One of the third areas that we feel like is a real time saver and a real way you can automate tasks is to manage email tools for users. One of the basic principles on cloud-based email systems is kind of putting some control back into the end user. I know that early on in Google, when some of the first companies rolled out, some of the fascinating things that people really loved is that they were able to customize their own email setup. They were able to put a theme on it. They were able to do some things with the labs and the multiple inboxes to make it set up and be configured exactly how they want it. And that's still a powerful feature for end users. But when you start talking about the functionality of how an email account functions, you want to make sure that you have some consistency across your domain and across your users so that troubleshooting and maintenance type tasks are done very easily within the organization. One of the other transitions that has happened when you've moved off an on-premise system, with an on-premise, you are able to log into the server, you're able to have some access to mail files that the cloud-based systems just don't provide you without logging in directly with that end user's username and password, which is not always a recommended option. So being able to set some of these email tools for users and also to be able to interact with that email account without having to write multiple scripts and those type of things can really help automate these tasks and make them very easy for not only IT personnel to do, but level 1 help desk and those type of resources have the ability to go in and operate on also. So some of the key time savers, setting up out of office and auto replies. This goes into deprovisioning. Most of the time when you deprovision a user nowadays, you don't usually delete their account. You don't usually block their email from coming in. You usually set up an auto reply that says, hey, so-and-so is no longer with our organization. Please reach out to this other person, or someone will be monitoring this email box, whatever the case may be. So being able to configure those, also being able to configure them. There's been a lot of times in the past where someone has left for vacation, they either forgot to turn on their out of office, or perhaps they turned it on but they didn't quite read through it and they had an old out of office message that said, I'm going to be gone for 6 weeks in in January and February and they just turn it on and now it's August and September and they're only going to be gone for 2 weeks. Those type of things with the tool sets that are out there, you're able to update those automatically for a user. Also delegation of inbox. That's another very powerful thing. If someone's going to be, if they're no longer with the organization or they're going to be gone for a long period of time, you can delegate a user's inbox and enable someone else in the organization to access and respond to emails and interact with the information that is in that email account or that's coming into that email account. And being able to do that without logging into a user's account, being able to do that without resetting passwords or without the delay that sometimes comes within Google Apps of someone requesting access and then it being approved and it taking 30 minutes for an hour to propagate through the system. To be able to do that instantly so that you're able to react to issues or problems right away is a huge thing. Another big item is filters and labels, particularly as more organizations move to Vault and similar type of archiving systems. A lot of times they're going to create Vault rules and archiving rules around labels. They may have a label that is keep forever that no archiving rules apply to. Or maybe they have a label called active projects that you're able to put messages in on active projects, and that way those messages aren't automatically archived off. This is great, but the minute you send out an email that says, hey, please create a label in your Google Apps account called active projects, you're going to instantly find out how many different ways people are able to spell active projects. And you're going to have sometimes with a space in the middle, sometimes without, sometimes it's going to be active projects, sometimes it's going to be active project. And again, you can build a whole bunch of different rules in Vault to try to capture all of those items, or you can use these tools and automatically push the label down. The label is spelled correctly for everybody, it's available for them, you're not answering help desk questions on how do I create a label, how do I do this, it happens automatically for the users. So again, managing the email tools is really effective at automating the process for end users, making tasks that can be very complicated by relying on the end user to do certain steps and certain areas of the process. If you can do it automatically, it's done for the end user, makes it very streamlined. Again, here's just an example of the auto reply portion of Better Cloud. Again, you can turn it on or off, you can actually set the dates, you can set the message that you want and automatically push that down, and it's in place within a matter of minutes, as quickly as the APIs can push it down. This is great as a user leaves an organization, or if a user is on a sabbatical for 3 months and forgot to set it up and calls into the help desk, you can have them automatically correct or update or put in place these type of auto replies. So, and you can do much more with other email tools to make sure that your environment is consistent and pre-configured, and it's all done without relying on the user to go through and configure these type of items. The fourth area is really scheduling reports. Again, anyone who has been in IT for any matter of time knows that there are certain reports that you have to provide to your boss, that you have to provide to HR or legal or other departments, that you have to provide on a regular basis. And the more you can automate these reports, the more you can schedule them so that they just happen. You don't have to take any action. They just arrive in your inbox or arrive in the appropriate inbox, the more time you're going to save. This becomes a very big deal, particularly as with some of the limitations in the Google Apps control panel around reporting. And a lot of times to get the right information, you end up having to pull 2 reports and then trying to combine them and maybe build out some scripting or some pivot tables or something to get the data to match up to then send a spreadsheet or a report onto your management. With a lot of the automated tools, with a lot of the API access, those type of things, you can automate these so that they're sent out on a regularly scheduled basis, they have the right information in the right order, in the right columns, in the right format, and it's all done without you having to interact with the system. Where this becomes a huge deal is as you start pulling various reports for other departments. Once you configure this, you no longer have to think about it. Doesn't matter if you're on vacation, if you're out of the office sick that day, it automatically is going to email the HR report of all suspended accounts at 1 o'clock on Thursday afternoon, so that for their 2 o'clock meeting, they have that report on hand. It's the latest and greatest data, and they're ready to move forward with it. Some of the basic reports, login reports, if you want to report on documents that are exposed publicly, groups with 0 members. There's a whole list of different types of reports that give you insight and information into your domain and into what's going on in your cloud platforms that will allow you to, again, continue to make that shift from being reactive to being more proactive. And again, if this data is automated going out to the people that it needs to go out to, but also automated coming into your inbox so that, every Monday morning you can take a look and say, who has delegated their email account to someone? Is it a legitimate delegation, or have they delegated out to their Gmail account, and do we need to remove it? And again, you can proactively do these type of reports to make sure that you have that information, make sure you're not surprised about things in your domain, and make sure that information is distributed out to the appropriate personnel within your organization. Again, there's multiple report building tools out there. In the Google Apps space, Better Cloud has a full report builder that allows you to not only build custom reports, so you can pick out the filters or what type of information you want to pull in, and then you can also build out the columns. The great thing about Better Cloud's reports is not only can you schedule them, but they all go out to a Google spreadsheet. So if you want to take that report's information and you want to build it out further, and you want to perhaps build some charts and graphs or do other tasks with that data, you're able to do that in the standard Google spreadsheet format. Also, like I said, if you want to share that out with the HR department, with the legal department, maybe with upper management, you can do that very easily because it's a Google spreadsheet, and that can all happen automatically. Without the user having any access to Better Cloud, they're just going to get an email that says, hey, here's your scheduled report. They get it at the same time every day, every week, every month, whatever the schedule you configure, and then they're able to interact with it because it's a Google spreadsheet. So again, there's lots of different report tools out there. The more you can automate the reporting aspect of IT, the more time, again, you're going to have to focus on other areas within your IT organization. And the fifth area is automating security with policies. Security has had a big shift moving over to the cloud. It used to be you were concerned about a lot of physical security. How is your data center set up? Who has access to your data center? Is it properly cooled? Is it properly secured? All of those type of things that with a cloud-based system, you no longer have to worry about. Part of your contract with the cloud provider is that they will provide a level of security, they will provide a level of physical security, they will provide a proper data center environment, they will provide proper connection to it. And oftentimes that security is at a much higher level than a lot of organizations can provide to their own data center. So what this has done is it's put more focus for IT personnel to control and automate the security that they do have control over. Cloud-based functionality has also provided different levels of access that were not available on on-premise systems. Things like Google Docs, where you can collaborate on the same document and share out the same document, or a Google site where you can share it out. And there's examples across all different platforms of sharing and collaboration that you can do that didn't used to be available in on-premise systems. So when you start looking at that security policy and how you want to control access to that environment, you also have to take a look at the access that your users have kind of from anywhere, any device, any machine, whether it's on mobile, whether they're sitting at home, whether they work from home. you need to take all of that into account. And one of the great ways to do that is to automate it with policies. And policies, to be truly effective, need to be able to be very granular, so you can apply them to as granular as a single user or no you. They also need to be so that they execute on a fairly regular and fairly consistent basis. Ideally, this would be a real-time basis. For a policy to truly be effective, you want it kind of running all the time. You don't want it to scan once a day or every 24 hours, because at that point in time, a document or a piece of collateral may have been exposed for 23 hours and 59 minutes since the last time the scan ran, and this presents a huge risk. So you want all your policies to be automated. You want them to run on a consistent basis and as often as possible, preferably on a real-time basis. Some of the biggest keys when you're talking about policies, particularly again using Google as the example, is you want to make sure that you're able to enforce compliance to your company's policies as well as to regulations, whether they be governmental regulations or policy regulations. You want to make sure that you're able to enforce that across your organization and across your entire Google Apps infrastructure. So some of the things to keep in mind are HIPAA regulations and personally identifiable information, whether that be social security numbers, health information. You also want to look at PCI regulations and PCI compliance. Again, particularly if you're someone who deals with credit cards, who's in any type of retail field, PCI compliance is a very big deal. It can really mean millions, perhaps billions of dollars to your organization if you're suddenly found in violations of PCI and not able to accept credit cards. We also want to make sure that we're able to automate other applications accessing our data. The great part about cloud applications being out there is that there are built-in tools and APIs for other things to access it. This really increases productivity, but it also in turn creates a risk that you want to be aware of. So not only viewing what data you have within your system and making sure no data is in the system and exposed that shouldn't be, but then also controlling what systems are looking at that data, whether it be a mobile app that wants to read your email or a browser plugin that wants access to your Google Drive. You want to make sure that you're controlling that. And then the last area is really around social networking. And this is a huge area that's fairly new that IT departments are looking to adapt and adjust to. But again, it can really increase productivity. A quick post on Google Plus or on LinkedIn or on some of these sites can get you a lot of feedback, a lot of information, a lot of ideas coming from outside your organization. But the inverse of that is true also. If someone posts something accidentally or intentionally that's public out on Google Plus, it could very quickly expose information that maybe is confidential or proprietary to your organization out into the world. So again, having automated security policies that are going to run through and control and manage that information. They're going to perhaps take action if something is shared inappropriately, or at a minimum just notify you and say, hey, this is out there. As a security personnel or IT personnel, you should really go look at this document. It appears there's a credit card information in it, or it appears that this shouldn't have been shared publicly and it is out shared publicly. Again, Better Cloud with our Drive compliance, our Google Plus policies, and our third-party apps policies allow you to automate a lot of these type of compliance and security policies. Again, it's as easy as setting up who the policy is for, what conditions you're looking for, and then determining what actions you want to take. And again, it gives you a lot of granular control. Our Drive compliance policies run in real time. So as a user shares out a document that perhaps has a credit card, you're going to be notified, as Better Cloud is notified through the APIs, the instant that document is shared out. We run our policies against it, and then we take action and notify the appropriate personnel right as that sharing is happening. So again, within a matter of minutes, the system can automatically take action, or you can take action, or notify the end user, and the end user can take action. We found that a lot of times when items are shared outside an organization, it's not done intentionally, it's done accidentally. They think that they want to send a link to someone, so they accidentally select share to everyone with the link, thinking that that's the only way they can get a link, not realizing that at that point, that link can be forwarded, anywhere in the world in a matter of seconds, and that document is exposed. Kind of to recap, some of what we feel and what our surveys have played out are some of the top time-saving automations. First one is properly leveraging org units. Again, making sure that the org unit is applied correctly to the platform, and that the functionality of the platform is then controlled and governed by that org unit. Again, some time up front is spent in creating that mapping and creating that process, but the rewards you get down the road and the ability to truly secure and manage your environment more than pays off for the time that's spent up front. Anytime you can delegate onboarding or offboarding, again, a great way to save some of IT's time, to offload that to a different department, or even to offload it to others within the IT department can really dramatically save the time that you're doing. And again, with the tools that are available, you're not offloading a bunch of back-end scripts or that type of stuff. You can offload it in a very controlled and very managed way. Managing email tools for users so that users have the correct type of email access, they have the correct setup and configuration within their email so that they're able to just function from day one, that the system just works, that their signature matches up and it's consistent across the organization. All of those type of things, the more you can manage those on the back end, seamless to the end user, the easier your job in IT is going to be, the fewer number of tickets you're going to get, and the more consistent presentation to the outside world your users will have. The fourth area is scheduling reports. Again, everyone needs to build out reports. Everyone needs to have access to the data and have awareness of what's going on in their domain. The more you can schedule these and automate these so that it's not a manual one-off type process, the more time you're going to have to focus on other tasks within your job duties. And the last item is automating security with policies. Again, having the right tool set and the right policies so that you can automate security, so that it's something that interacts with your domain on a 24/7 basis, that it's always out there, it's always keeping a watch for you, so that you don't have to do a manual process of looking through hundreds, perhaps thousands, even millions of documents, trying to find a needle in a haystack. Automate that with policies so that all your security is taken care of. Some of the next steps. Now that we've offloaded the routine tasks, what do we do with that time? We've made it so that we no longer have to spend the 1 to 5 hours or perhaps 10 plus hours a month on onboarding or offboarding. Maybe we've automated email tools or reports. What do we want to do with that time? Some of the key things that we've heard from IT admins that really make IT a proactive organization is end user training and increased adoption. Going out and actually speaking with the end users to drive adoption and to make them aware of the tool set that's available with the cloud applications. Another big area is shadow IT. Again, auditing third-party apps and being aware of what other applications or systems or browser plugins, whatever the case may be, has access to your data within your cloud applications. Again, this is a time-consuming thing, but if you lock it down with policies and then manage those policies and manage those apps correctly, you can really have granular control over what's going on within your environment. And then the big one is replacing legacy apps with cloud alternatives. Again, some of the advantages of cloud is that it tends to be fairly quick to roll out. It's something that you can roll out in a test environment without building out servers, without building out data center, any of that kind of stuff. You can actually just request a trial for most of these applications, most of the add-ons, and literally try it within your environment for 15, 30 days, whatever the case may be. And as IT shifts to the cloud, there's a lot of organizations that have put down the gauntlet that said, from here on out, everything going forward is going to be cloud. Excuse me. So the more that you can get ahead of this and be aware of what cloud applications are out there, be aware of what can replace some of your legacy apps, the more control you're going to have over your environment, and the more prepared you're going to be as you shift to these cloud alternatives. Again, you know, all of these automated tasks can apply to any cloud application out there. We focus kind of on Gmail because we know that the majority of people attending this webinar were Gmail users. We've also mentioned Better Cloud. Better Cloud has a lot of tools to really help you automate these tasks. So if you're interested, we do provide a free trial of Better Cloud if you're not already a user. And you can go to bettercloud.com/install to leverage that trial. And again, thank you for attending this Cloud IT webinar. If you're interested in the next one, which is the 10 numbers that any Google Apps admin should know, you can register for that at bettercloud.com/numbers. And again, thank you for your time today, and I appreciate you guys attending the webinar series and look forward to talking to you again.